He was a titan of industry, a man who built an empire from sheer will. She was the quiet, poor girl he married, a simple artist he kept like a beautiful, silent accessory. When she told him she was pregnant, he did the unthinkable. He didn't just ask for a divorce. He erased her. He threw her out with nothing, replacing her with a woman who matched his status. He thought she would simply disappear. He never imagined that the woman he broke would be the one to return and take everything he had ever built. The penthouse on the 78th floor of 157 wasn't a home. It was a statement. Lucian Vance didn't do home. He did statements. Everything was glass, chrome, and brutalist art that cost more than a suburban house. It was a cold, magnificent box in the sky, and Bella Hayes felt like a rare, fragile bird trapped inside it. Bella met Lucian Vance 2 years ago at a small gallery opening in Chelsea. She was the artist. Her sculptures, delicate kinetic pieces made from reclaimed wire and glass, were on display. He wasn't a man who appreciated art. He was a man who appreciated acquisitions, and he had decided to acquire her. Bella came from what Lucian's circle called dusty money, old, respectable, but ultimately insignificant. Her family had been academics and poets, people who valued books over balance sheets. To Lucian, this translated as poor. He loved telling the story of how he saved her from a life of adjunct professorships and unsold art. He loved the contrast. He was the self-made billionaire, the Wolf of Wall Street, the CEO and founder of the Vance Ascendancy Group, VAG, a sprawling holdings company that devoured everything from tech startups to luxury real estate. She was his quiet, beautiful, and utterly dependent wife. This evening was a dinner party. Not a gathering of friends, but a strategic alignment of assets. Lucian was wooing a potential investor, a Japanese mogul, and Bella's role was clear: sit, smile, and be the perfect, silent hostess. "Bella, darling," Lucian boomed, his voice echoing slightly off the marble. He was tall, with a cruel, handsome face, and hair so perfectly coiffed it looked like a helmet. "Mr. Takeda was just admiring your hobbies." Bella forced a smile. "My art is my work, Lucian. It's a pleasure to meet you, Mr. Takeda." "Lucian tells me you are very creative," Takeda said, his eyes polite but blank. "She's wonderfully creative," Lucian interrupted, placing a heavy hand on her shoulder. "She makes these charming little trinkets. I'm thinking of having one put in the lobby as a sort of mascot." The laughter from his associates was sharp and practiced. Bella felt the familiar burn of humiliation. Her trinkets had won awards before he'd bought the gallery that represented her, and turned it into a vanity press for his own corporate art. Later that night, after the guests had gone, and the caterers had cleared the last champagne flute, Bella stood by the floor-to-ceiling windows, watching the New York City lights blur into a cold fire. She was holding a small white stick in her hand, a stick she had been staring at for an hour. It was positive. Her first feeling wasn't joy, but a cold, sharp dread. She had been feeling unwell for weeks, a fatigue she'd blamed on the altitude of their life. Now it had a name. Lucien was in his study, a glass-walled room where he reviewed quarterly reports. He hated being disturbed. Bella took a deep breath, her hand resting protectively on her still flat stomach. This would change things. This had to change things. It had to make them a family, make this sterile apartment a home. She pushed open the heavy glass door. "Lucien?" He didn't look up, his eyes locked on a glowing screen. "Later, Bella. I'm closing the Atia deal." "Lucien, please, it's important." He sighed, a sound of profound irritation, and spun in his leather chair. What? Did the caterer overcharge us? I'm pregnant. The words hung in the air-conditioned silence. Lucian's face, usually so animated with ambition or disdain, went utterly, chillingly blank. He stared at her, not at her face, but at her stomach, as if he could see the invading cells. No, he said, not as a question, but as a command. What? What do you mean, no? Bella stammered. The test is positive. I'm pregnant. I mean, no, he repeated, standing up. He walked over to her, his 6'4" frame towering. That is not possible. We are not doing that. Doing that? Lucienne, it's a baby. It's our baby. It's a complication, he hissed, his voice dropping to a dangerous quiet. It's a liability. My entire brand is built on speed, on agility, on ascendancy. A child, a messy, screaming, dependent thing. That's not part of the 5-year plan. That's not part of the brand. The brand? Bella felt a dizzying, sickening lurch. Lucienne, this is our life. He turned away, running a hand through his perfect hair. You will handle it. Handle it? A cold realization dawned. You mean, get rid of it? I mean, you will take care of the problem, he said, turning back, his eyes like polished stones. You are my wife, Bella. Your one job is to make my life easier, not more complicated. I have $1 billion merger on the line. I am being courted by the board of Sinclair Global. I do not have time for this domestic drama. Tears streamed down Bella's face, hot and silent. It's not a drama, Lucian. It's my body. It's a life. He looked at her, truly looked at her, and for the first time, she saw no recognition, no affection, no shared history. Just cold, ruthless appraisal. This is incredibly disappointing, Bella, he said, as if she were a stock that had just underperformed. You are not seeing the big picture. Fix this. I have a call with Hong Kong. He sat back down at his desk, the blue light of the monitor illuminating his face. He was already gone. Bella stood there for a long time, the positive test digging into her palm, the chill of the penthouse sinking into her bones. She wasn't just married to a stranger. She was married to a monster. The next 2 days were a blur of silent, agonizing tension. Lucian acted as if the conversation had never happened. He left early for the gym, returned to shower and dress in his bespoke suits, and spent his evenings on conference calls, his voice a confident baritone vibrating through the walls. He didn't ask her if she'd handled it. He simply expected that his will would be done. Bella, for her part, was a ghost. She ate nothing. She went to her studio, a small, sun-drenched room he'd had designed for her. But she just stared at the wire and glass, her tools untouched. She was making a plan. Not a plan of revenge, but of survival. On the 3rd day, Lucian's assistant, a woman with a face as sharp and bloodless as an envelope opener, informed Bella that Mr. Vance required her presence for dinner. At Aurelia, his favorite, a Michelin-starred temple of corporate power. Bella knew what this was. It was a performance. She dressed with deliberate care, not in the soft, flowing fabrics she loved, but in a sheath dress of severe grey, her hair pulled back in a tight, merciless knot. She looked less like a wife, and more like an adversary. When Lucian saw her, he nodded once, a flicker of approval in his eyes. He liked it when things looked professional. The restaurant was hushed, all dark wood, white linens, and the quiet clinking of expensive silver. They were seated at Lucian's regular table, a power booth with a view of the entire room. "Wine?" he asked, not looking at her. "I'm still pregnant, Lucian." His jaw tightened. "So you've decided to be difficult?" "I've decided to have my child," she said, her voice low and steady. The terror of the last 48 hours had burned away, leaving something hard and cold in its place. Lucian placed his menu down. He smiled, a thin reptilian gesture that didn't reach his eyes. "Bella, I've always valued simplicity. You, I thought, were simple. You were an easy, low-maintenance asset. It seems I miscalculated your operating costs. I am not one of your companies, Lucian." "No, you're not," he agreed. "A company I can't just get rid of. A wife? Well, that's a different line item." Before Bella could respond, a shadow fell over their table. A woman, impossibly beautiful and tailored, slid into the booth beside Lucian. She was all sharp angles and expensive perfume. Bella recognized her instantly. Isabella Sinclair, the daughter of the man Lucian was courting, the heiress to Sinclair Global. "Bella, darling," Isabella purred, her voice like silk drawn over steel. "So lovely to see you." Bella looked at Lucian. The coldness in her stomach became a block of ice. "What is this?" "This," Lucian said, placing his hand over Isabella's, their fingers lacing together on the white tablecloth, "is the future. Isabella and I are a strategic merger." "You're sleeping with her," Bella said. It wasn't a question. "Don't be so banal, Bella," Lucian scoffed. "We're aligning. The Vance Ascendancy Group and Sinclair Global are in talks for a full merger. This solidifies the deal. It's a dynasty, Bella. Something you, with your dusty background, could never understand." Isabella smiled at Bella, a smile of genuine, pitying contempt. "Lucian needs a partner, Bella. Not a dependent. And a child right now. It's just so messy. It's not on brand." "On brand," Bella repeated, the word tasting like poison. "You're divorcing me." "I am," Lucian said, "and I'm going to be generous. I'm prepared to offer you a one-time payment, $500,000. Bella almost laughed. It was a half-year's budget for his wine cellar. "In exchange," Lucian continued, pushing a thin leather folder across the table, "you will sign this. It's a comprehensive non-disclosure agreement. You will never speak of me, my business, or this complication again. You will quietly disappear. You will, of course, handle the problem, and you will attribute our separation to irreconcilable differences. You will go back to your dusty little life, and I will ascend." Bella looked at the folder. She looked at Lucien's smug, expectant face. She looked at Isabella, who was already inspecting her crimson nails. "And if I don't sign?" Bella asked. Lucien's smile vanished. "Then I will destroy you. You signed a prenuptial agreement, Bella. A very, very good one, written by my lawyers. It entitles you to precisely nothing. If you fight me, I will drag you through the mud. I will paint you as an unstable, grasping gold digger. I will prove you are an unfit mother before the thing is even born. I will use the full weight of the Vance Ascendancy Group to ensure you never win a single contract, never sell another piece of art, never even rent a decent apartment. You will be a pariah. 500,000 is a gift. Take it." The silence stretched. Bella could feel the eyes of the other diners, sensing the shift in the room's atmosphere. Lucian leaned in. "Sign it, Bella. Take the money. Be the simple, poor girl I married." Bella picked up the heavy water goblet from the table. She looked at the clear, cold water. Then she looked at Lucian. "No," she said. And she opened the folder, pulling out the top page of the agreement. Lucian smiled, thinking she was going to read it. Instead, she dipped her hand into the water goblet and began to slowly, methodically, tear the thick, waterlogged paper into tiny, useless pieces. She dropped the wet pulp onto the pristine white tablecloth. Isabella recoiled. You animal! Lucian's face went purple with rage. You will regret this. Bella stood up. She looked down at the two of them, the perfectly matched reptilian couple. No, Lucian, she said, her voice clear and carrying in the sudden silence of the restaurant. I'm not signing your paper. I'm not taking your blood money, and I'm not handling anything. I'm going to have this baby. And as for you, you haven't destroyed me. You've just unleashed me. She turned and walked out of the restaurant, not in a run of tears, but with a measured, steady pace. She didn't look back. She left her purse, her coat, her key to the penthouse. She walked out of Aurelia with nothing but the clothes on her back and the life growing inside her. She was, by Lucian's definition, finally and completely poor. And for the first time in 2 years, she was free. The first 72 hours were the hardest. Freedom, it turned out, was cold. Bella walked until her feet bled in their useless designer heels. She had no phone, no money, no ID. Lucienne had, as promised, moved with the speed of a predator. By the time she'd walked the 50 blocks to her old, pre-Lucian apartment in the West Village, the locks had already been changed. The doorman, a man who used to accept Christmas tips from her, wouldn't even meet her eyes. Her bank accounts, the small ones she'd kept for her art, were frozen. He hadn't just cut her off, he'd excised her from the grid. She sold her wedding ring, the flawless 5-carat rock he'd presented to her like a financial statement, in a grimy pawn shop on Canal Street for a fraction of its worth. It was enough for a bus ticket and a burner phone. She sat in a cramped, foul-smelling diner, nursing a cup of tea, the small pile of cash her only worldly possession. She was pregnant, alone, and being actively hunted by a billionaire with a vendetta. She scrolled through the contacts she'd managed to memorize. There was only one name, one call she had sworn to her mother on her deathbed she would never make. Her mother's estranged brother, her uncle. She dialed the number, a private line she hadn't used in 15 years. It rang once. Yes. The voice was not a greeting. It was a sound like gravel and old whiskey. Uncle Arthur, Bella's voice cracked. A long, heavy silence. Bella? Bella Hayes? Is that you, child? Yes, she whispered, the tears she'd refused to shed in front of Lucian now coming hot and fast. I'm in trouble. I'm in New York. I need help. Where are you? She told him the diner's address. Stay there. A car will be there in 10 minutes. It will be a black Bentley, license plate BWH1. Do not speak to anyone else. Do not move. Understood? Yes. Uncle, thank you. The line clicked dead. Arthur Blackwell was not a man. He was a myth. He was the Black in Blackwell Strategic Holdings, BSH, a private equity firm so secretive it didn't even have a website. While Lucian Vance plastered his name on buildings and courted the press, Arthur Blackwell operated in the deep, silent shadows of global finance. He didn't buy companies. He absorbed them. He was old world money, so old it had lapped new money 10 times over. He and Bella's mother had a falling out decades ago. Bella's mother, the poet, had despised his vulture capitalism. He, in turn, had despised her willful poverty. But Bella had been his favorite. As a child, he'd taught her to play chess, not with pieces, but with concepts. Never play the board, Bella, he'd say. Play the man. The Bentley arrived. A man built like a bank vault, named Thomas, opened her door, and she sank into the silent, impossibly soft leather. An hour later, she was pulling up to a sprawling, Gothic-style stone estate in Greenwich, Connecticut, a place so removed from the world it felt like a different century. Arthur Blackwell was waiting for her in his library. He was smaller than she remembered, older, but his eyes were the same, a piercing, intelligent blue. He was in a wheelchair, a fact that shocked her, but his presence was undiminished. He was wrapped in a cashmere blanket, a glass of dark liquid in his hand. "You look," he said, appraising her, "like hell." Bella finally broke. She collapsed into a chair opposite him and told him everything. The marriage, the art, the penthouse, the pregnancy, the dinner at Aurelia, Isabella Sinclair, the NDA, the wet, pulped paper. Arthur listened, his face impassive. He steepled his fingers, staring into the fireplace. When she finished, the only sound was the crackle of the fire and Bella's ragged breathing. Finally, he spoke. "Lucian Vance." He tasted the name. "Vance Ascendancy Group. I know him. New money, all leverage and no foundation. He's built a house of cards on a cliff's edge." "He's trying to destroy me," Bella whispered. "He already has, child," Arthur said, not unkindly. "The you he married, anyway. That's over. The question is, who are you going to be now?" He wheeled himself over to a massive, antique desk. He tapped a few keys on a terminal that looked starkly modern in the ancient room. A screen lit up, showing a complex web of corporate structures. "Vance Ascendancy Group," Arthur murmured. "His holdings are flashy. Atia Smart City Project in Dubai, a complete vanity play. Luxury goods division in Milan, probably over-leveraged. Tech acquisitions in Silicon Valley, all burning cash. He's diversified his risk, which means he's diversified his vulnerabilities." He looked at Bella, his eyes sharp. "You said he tried to make you sign an NDA?" "Yes." "Good. That means he's afraid. He knows he's exposed." Arthur took a sip of his drink. "And this merger, Sinclair Global, that's not a merger, it's a life raft. He needs Isabella Sinclair's capital to cover his debts. He's not ascending, he's drowning." He turned his full attention to Bella. The room felt charged, like the air before a storm. "You have two choices," Arthur said. "I can give you a check, enough to disappear. You can go to Switzerland or Argentina, live a quiet life, raise your child in obscurity. He will never find you. That is option 1. "And option 2? Bella asked, her voice gaining strength. A slow, wolfish smile spread across Arthur Blackwell's face. It was the most terrifying, beautiful thing she had ever seen. "Option 2, he said, "is you stay. You have your child here. And I teach you. I don't teach you to paint. I teach you to fight. I teach you my business. You have my blood in you, Bella. The blood your mother tried to wash out with poetry. You have a mind. You see patterns. I saw it when you were 10 and beating me at chess." He gestured to the screen. "He took your life. Fine. We will take his livelihood. He wants to build an empire. We will take it from him. Not in a day, not in a year, but brick by brick, deal by deal, until all he has left is that tacky penthouse and a wife who despises him as much as he deserves." He leaned forward, his voice a promise. "He thinks you're poor, Bella. He has no idea what true wealth is. It's not the money, it's the will. So you tell me, do you want to run? Or do you want to win?" Bella looked at her hands, still raw from her walk. She thought of her child, a tiny, blameless life. She thought of Lucian's smug, cruel face. She thought of the wet paper pulp on the white tablecloth. She looked up, and her eyes were no longer the soft, forgiving eyes of an artist. They were the cold, blue, calculating eyes of a Blackwell. "Teach me," she said. "Teach me how to tear him down." The next 5 years were a crucible. The Blackwell estate was not a sanctuary. It was a training ground. 2 months after her arrival, Bella gave birth to a healthy, beautiful baby boy. She named him Liam Hayes. Not Vance, not Blackwell. Hayes. He was hers. He was her anchor and her motivation. While nannies hired by Arthur took care of Liam's day-to-day needs, Bella's education began. Arthur was a merciless teacher. He woke her at 5 a.m. Her days were not filled with art, but with macroeconomics, corporate law, forensic accounting, and high-stakes negotiation theory. She was no longer Bella, the sculptor. She was Ms. Hayes, the new executive trainee at Blackwell Strategic Holdings. Lucian Vance's weakness, Arthur explained in the library one night, Liam asleep in a bassinet by the fire, is his ego. He believes he is a genius. He is not. He is a salesman. He sells an idea of success. But his fundamentals are garbage. He builds on debt. He expands too fast. He doesn't read the fine print. Bella, who had once found contracts baffling, was now reading 100-page loan agreements for sport. She earned an executive MBA online from Wharton in an astonishing 18 months. She didn't just learn the language of finance, she learned to think in it. Arthur had her sit in on his calls, first as a silent observer, then as a participant. She learned to command a room with a whisper, to find the single, fatal flaw in a balance sheet, to mask her intelligence behind a facade of polite inquiry until the moment of the kill. The soft-flowing artist was gone. In her place was a woman with a spine of steel and an ice-water gaze. She wore her hair in a severe, elegant bob. Her wardrobe was now custom-tailored suits by Savile Row, armor for the modern-day warrior. She also learned about Arthur's past. Lucien's father, Harrison Vance, Arthur told her, was my first partner, back in the 70s. He betrayed me. He took a project we built together, leveraged it behind my back, and left me holding the bag. I recovered, obviously. But Harrison, he taught his son to be a shark. He just forgot to teach him how to swim. This was not just business for Arthur. This was, in its own way, family justice. After 3 years, Arthur gave Bella her first real test. He made her the head of a new, anonymous acquisitions division within BSH. Her job? Find and acquire distressed assets. Meanwhile, Lucian Vance was, on the surface, thriving. The merger with Sinclair Global had gone through. The new Vance Sinclair Ascendancy, VSA, was the darling of the financial press. Lucian and Isabella were the new power couple, their faces on the cover of Forbes and Fortune. They were building their Etia smart city, a monument to their own egos in the desert. But Bella, with Arthur's resources, could see the cracks. She saw the quarterly reports Lucien thought were private. She saw the massive, ballooning debt on the ITIA project. She saw that the luxury goods division was bleeding money. He's hiding it, Bella told Arthur, pointing to a line item. He's using capital from the tech division to cover the losses in luxury. He's cooking the books. It's subtle, but it's fraud. Good, Arthur smiled. But we don't use that yet. That's the arrow in the quiver. We don't shoot to wound. We shoot to kill. First, we need a man on the inside. It took 6 months to find him. Mark Donovan. He was the chief financial officer of the luxury goods division, a brilliant, unassuming numbers man who had been with VAG since before Bella. He was loyal, old school, and, as Bella's research discovered, Lucian had recently and publicly humiliated him. Lucian had passed him over for the group CFO position, giving it to one of Isabella's unqualified cousins. Mark Donovan was angry, and he was meticulous. Bella made the approach herself, not as Bella Hayes, but as a representative of a Swiss private equity firm. They met in a quiet bar in Geneva. "Mr. Donovan," Bella said, sliding a folder across the table. My employers believe there are irregularities in Vance Sinclair's public filings, and we believe you are the only one who truly understands them. Mark was wary. I don't know what you're talking about. Bella leaned in. I'm talking about the intercompany loan from VSA Tech to VSA Luxury, filed as project revenue. I'm talking about the predated sales invoices from the Milan office. I'm talking about felony-level securities fraud. And I'm talking about the fact that Lucien Vance is making you sign off on it. Mark's face went pale. We don't want to expose him, Bella said coolly. Not yet. We want to invest, but we need a reliable partner inside the company. Someone who knows where the bodies are buried. Someone who, perhaps, feels he hasn't been valued correctly. She named a number that would allow Mark Donovan to retire to his own private island. Mark looked at this sharp, powerful woman. He had no idea who she was. Why are you doing this? Let's just say, Bella said, finishing her drink, I have a passion for corrections. I believe in balancing the books, all of them. Mark Donovan, a man with 20 years of integrity, made a decision. He was tired of being the janitor for Lucien's crimes. Tell me what you need, he said. Bella smiled. I need everything. The war began not with a bang, but with a whisper. With Mark Donovan as their inside source, Bella and Arthur now had a god-level view of the Vance Sinclair ascendancy. They saw every email, every internal memo, every panicked late-night call between Lucien and his new, unqualified CFO. Lucien's vanity project, the Etia Smart City, was the linchpin of his vulnerability. It was a billion-dollar black hole, surviving on a constant, desperate influx of new loans. The project's success depended on one thing, a massive, exclusive contract with Titan Dynamics, the world's leading supplier of next-generation solar and water purification technology. Without Titan, Etia was just a collection of empty glass buildings in the sand. Lucien had been wining and dining Titan's CEO for months. The deal was in its final stages. It was, as Lucien had boasted to the Wall Street Journal, a legacy-defining partnership. He's putting up 30% of VSA's unencumbered assets as collateral for the final loan to secure the Titan deal, Bella explained to Arthur, her office in the Blackwell estate, now a high-tech command center. Liam, now 5, was in the next room with a tutor, learning to read. He's exposed, Arthur murmured. His flank is wide open. So, let's take Titan. Take them? Bella asked. Buy them, Arthur clarified. Outright. You're the head of acquisitions. Go acquire them. Titan Dynamics was a privately held company, not for sale. But Bella's team, armed with Blackwell's capital, didn't make an offer. They made a certainty. They approached Titan's aging founder and offered him a price so far above market value, it was effectively a royal ransom. More than that, they offered to fully fund his passion project, pure research, with no strings attached. The deal was signed in 48 hours, in total secrecy, through a shell corporation registered in Luxembourg, Helios Strategic Partners. Bella Hayes was its sole signatory. 2 days before Lucien was set to sign his legacy deal, he received a call. Mr. Vance, the CEO of Titan said, his voice cold, I'm afraid our deal is off. We're no longer in a position to partner with VSA. What are you talking about, Robert? Lucien barked. We have a dinner on Thursday. I'm sending my jet. I'm afraid that won't be necessary. As of 9 a.m. this morning, Titan Dynamics was acquired. The new owners are re-evaluating all pending contracts. Acquired? By who? Lucien was shouting now. Who bought you? I'll double their offer. I don't think you will, Lucien. I'm not even sure who they are. The holding company is called Helios Strategic Partners. Never heard of them. But their bank is very real. I'm sorry. The line went dead. Lucian threw his phone against a wall, where it shattered. "Who is Helios?" he screamed. The fallout was immediate. Without the Titan deal, the final round of funding for Etia collapsed. The stock of VSA, which had been artificially inflated on the promise of the project, began to slide. It was a small slide at first, but the sharks were circling. Lucian was forced to take on junk loans at predatory interest rates to keep the Atia project from defaulting entirely, which would trigger a cascade of cross-defaults across his entire empire. And quietly, on the other side of the market, Bella's other shell corporation, Blackwell Strategic Holdings, began to buy that debt. She didn't buy it all at once. She bought it in small, untraceable parcels from desperate third-party lenders. Lucian, in his arrogance, was fighting a ghost. He was trying to find out who Helios was, never realizing that the real threat was the creditor who was now, piece by piece, buying his chains. Bella felt no elation. This was not joy. It was procedure. It was the first surgical cut, precise and deep, severing a major artery. Now they just had to wait and watch him bleed. Isabella, meanwhile, was not taking the pressure well. Mark Donovan's emails revealed she was furious. From Isabella, vansavsa.com to Lucien, vansavsa.com. Subject: This mess. Lucien, my father is calling. The Sinclair name is being associated with a failing project. The Atia numbers are a disaster. This Helios group made you look like a fool. You promised me an empire. Right now, I'm the queen of a mud pile. Fix it. Lucian's reply, intercepted by Mark and forwarded to Bella, was simple and telling. From Lucien, vansavsa.com to Isabella, vansavsa.com. I'm liquidating assets from the luxury division to cover the Etia gap. Stay out of my way. Bella looked at the email. He's doing it, she told Arthur. He's taking the bait. He's selling off the profitable parts of his business to save the one that's killing him. Ego, my dear, Arthur said, sipping his tea. It's a more reliable poison than arsenic. Now, let's go shopping for a luxury goods division. The next 18 months were a masterclass in corporate warfare. Lucian was a bull, and Bella was the matador. She never attacked him head-on. She simply placed the spears, letting him exhaust himself, letting him bleed out from 1,000 small cuts. While Lucian was distracted by the Etia catastrophe, Bella, through another shell company, made a generous offer to buy the struggling VSA luxury division. Desperate for cash, Lucian sold it for pennies on the dollar. He had no idea he was selling it to his ex-wife. Bella immediately and quietly installed Mark Donovan as its new CEO. The first thing Mark did was open the real books. The fraud was even worse than they'd imagined. Now Bella wasn't just his creditor. She was his competitor. She streamlined the luxury division, rehired the talent Lucien had fired, and launched a new line that directly competed with and crushed VSA's remaining retail holdings. Lucian was trapped. His stock was in free fall. His Etia project was a ghost town. And worst of all, he was drowning in debt. Debt that he didn't know was almost entirely owned by a single, hostile entity, Blackwell Strategic Holdings. The final betrayal, as it often does, came from within. Isabella Sinclair, who had merged her company with his to build a dynasty, saw the writing on the wall. The Sinclair family lawyers had found a clause in the merger agreement, a key man clause tied to Lucian's personal performance and the company's stock value. With the stock in the gutter, she had an out, and she had found a new, more successful partner. Mark Donovan forwarded Bella an audio file from a bug he'd planted in the VSA boardroom. It was Isabella and her father on a conference call. A complete write-off. Isabella's voice said, cold as a scalpel. "The Vance name is toxic. We're decoupling. We activate the clause. We take back the Sinclair assets, and we leave him with the garbage." "And Lucian?" her father asked. "Lucian is a liability," Isabella said. "He's a drowning man, Daddy, and I'm not going to let him pull me under." The next day, Isabella Sinclair filed for divorce. Simultaneously, Sinclair Global announced it was pulling all its assets and branding from the VSA merger, citing financial malfeasance and a catastrophic loss of confidence in leadership. It was the death blow. The news hit the wire, and VSA's stock didn't just fall, it evaporated. It was worthless. The banks, the hedge funds, the private lenders, all of them called their loans at once. It was a margin call on an entire empire. Lucian Vance, the man on the cover of Forbes, was suddenly, spectacularly bankrupt. Except all those disparate, angry creditors all seemed to be selling their debt, and it was all being bought in the final hours by one firm. In the VSA penthouse, Lucian was a man undone. His perfect suit was rumpled. He hadn't slept in days. His office, which had once been a testament to his power, was now a tomb. The screens were all dark. His assistant buzzed in. "Mr. Vance, the board is here, and the primary creditor. They've called an emergency meeting in the main boardroom. They're waiting." "The primary creditor?" Lucian snarled, straightening his tie. "Who? Which one? Morgan Stanley? Goldman?" I don't know, sir. They just said Blackwell Strategic Holdings." Lucian paused. Blackwell, he knew that name. Old money. Reclusive. Blackwell. Arthur Blackwell. He's a ghost. He hasn't been seen in public for a decade. "Well," the assistant said, swallowing. His representative, is here." Lucian smoothed his hair. A spark of his old arrogance returned. Fine. Let the old vulture come. Let him pick at the bones. He'll find there's nothing left. Isabella took it all." "That's not entirely true, sir," the assistant said, looking at a printout. "It seems all of your debt, the ETIA loans, the corporate bonds, even the mortgage on this building, it's all been consolidated. It's all owned by Blackwell. They don't just own your debt, sir." Lucian's blood ran cold. "What?" I think they own you." Lucian walked out of his office and toward the main boardroom, a man walking to his own execution. He was about to find out just who he'd been fighting for the last 5 years. The walk from his private office to the 78th floor main boardroom was the longest of Lucian Vance's life. It was a walk he'd taken thousands of times, a 50-yard stroll down a hall of Italian marble, a passage of power. But today, the marble felt like ice. His assistant, a young, terrified man who had replaced the one Lucian fired last week, had simply said, "Sir, the board is convened, and the primary creditor is here. They are waiting for you." Lucian had straightened his tie, a shield of silk. "Primary creditor? Which one? Goldman? Deutsche Bank?" They just said, "Blackwell Strategic Holdings." "Sir." The name hit Lucian like a physical blow. Blackwell, Arthur Blackwell, a ghost, a myth from the old world of finance, a man who hadn't been seen in public for a decade. Lucian's bravado, his core arrogance, was already kicking in. An old man in a wheelchair, a relic? He thinks he can pick at my bones. He was a cornered animal, but he was still a predator. He was already running calculations, preparing his bluffs, his threats. This was just another negotiation. He was Lucian Vance. He always won. He pushed open the 10-foot mahogany doors. The boardroom was dark. The storm blinds, which he'd had installed to showcase the godlike view of Central Park, were drawn, casting the room in a heavy, sepulchral gloom. The air was cold, the expensive ventilation system humming in a funereal drone. The few remaining members of his board, the ones who hadn't already fled the sinking ship, were seated along the sides of the massive obsidian table. They looked like statues in a mausoleum, their faces pale and grim. They refused to meet his gaze. At the head of the table, in his chair, sat two figures. One was, as expected, Arthur Blackwell. He was in a state-of-the-art wheelchair, a cashmere blanket over his knees, his ancient eyes as sharp and piercing as shards of blue ice. He looked every bit the reclusive, dying monarch. Beside him, in the true seat of power, the one Lucian had custom-built for himself, sat a woman. She was a silhouette at first, backlit by the one sliver of light from the door. She was looking down, reviewing a file. "Arthur," Lucian boomed, his voice echoing with a confidence he didn't feel. "A hell of a time to come out of retirement. What's the meaning of this? You call an emergency meeting. You're not even a shareholder. You're a creditor. You're a vulture." Arthur Blackwell simply smiled, a terrible, thin-lipped gesture. "I'm not the one you need to address, Lucian." The woman looked up. Lucian Vance's entire world stopped. It was not a gasp. It was a cessation of breath, a vacuum. His heart hammered against his ribs, a panicked bird in a cage. He physically stumbled, one hand gripping the back of a chair for support. It was Bella. But it wasn't Bella. The Bella he knew was soft. She wore flowing dresses and linen. Her hair was a cloud of soft curls. Her eyes were warm, forgiving, and weak. This woman, this creature, was an empress of ice. Her hair was a severe, intimidating bob, dark as a raven's wing. She was wearing a crimson suit, tailored so sharply it looked like it had been forged rather than sewn. And her eyes were the same piercing, intelligent, calculating blue as the old man beside her. They were Blackwell eyes. "Bella," he whispered. The name tasted like ash. It was impossible. It was a hallucination. "Mr. Vance," she said. Her voice. That was the worst part. It wasn't her voice. It was a cold, clear chime that cut through the silence, a voice honed in boardrooms and back-alley negotiations. It held no tremor, no fear, no love. It held nothing. It was the voice of a CEO. "Please," she continued, "take a seat. Or don't. It truly doesn't matter." "You," Lucian sputtered, pointing a shaking finger. His mind was a blizzard of panic. You did this? Helios? The Titan deal? The luxury division? You?" Bella actually smiled. It was the smile of a predator that had just cornered its prey after a 5-year hunt. "Helios Strategic Partners," she confirmed, as if to a child. "A holding company I established to acquire Titan Dynamics. Aetia was a flawed concept from the start, Lucian. You were building a city with no water and no power. It was an amateur's mistake. You were so focused on the idea of an empire, you forgot to build a foundation. And the debt," Arthur Blackwell rasped from his chair, clearly enjoying the show. "My niece, it turns out, has a remarkable talent for collections." You were my wife!" Lucian finally roared, finding his voice. The accusation was his only defense. This is illegal. It's a vendetta. You used private knowledge. You used me." Bella laughed. It was not a sound of mirth. It was a dry, humorless sound, like stones clicking together. "Private knowledge?" she repeated, standing up. She was taller than he remembered, or perhaps it was just the power she radiated. She walked to the head of the table, placing her palms flat on the obsidian. "What private knowledge did I use, Lucian? The knowledge that you were arrogant? That you expanded too fast? That your ego wrote checks your balance sheet couldn't cash? That was all public. You screamed it from the cover of Forbes. She began to pace, slowly, like a panther. Or do you mean the other private knowledge? The fact that you were cooking the books? That you were using the tech division as a piggy bank to cover the billion-dollar hemorrhage from your ETIA vanity project? Lucian turned white. Lies! Am I? Bella snapped. Ask your CFO. Oh, wait. You fired him. You humiliated him. Mark Donovan. A brilliant, loyal man. And meticulous. His records are a work of art. The SEC was very interested in them. We filed a comprehensive fraud investigation this morning. The board members gasped. One of them actually whimpered. You see, Lucien, Bella continued, her voice dropping to a conversational, chilling tone. You taught me everything I needed to know. You thought I was just a poor artist, a trinket maker. But I was watching. I watched you lie. I watched you bully. I watched you build this entire, glittering, fraudulent world. You didn't just teach me to paint. You taught me to win. She returned to her chair. Which brings us to now. As of 9:05 a.m. this morning, Blackwell Strategic Holdings, as the sole and primary creditor of the Vance Ascendancy Group, has taken possession of all remaining company assets, pending the criminal investigation. She gestured to a stack of files in front of her. Your dynasty is a pile of ash. Isabella, I see, has already filed for divorce and decoupled her assets. Smart woman. She at least knows when to cut bait. Bella looked at the board members. This is my first act as the new owner. I call a motion to remove Lucian Vance as CEO and chairman of the board, effective immediately, and to have him escorted from the premises. Do I have a second? Seconded! Arthur Blackwell boomed, slamming his hand on the arm of his wheelchair. All in favor? Every hand on the board shot up. Not with enthusiasm, with desperate, final relief. Lucien had collapsed into the chair he'd been leaning on. He was a hollowed-out man. The bluster, the arrogance, the power. It had all evaporated, leaving a pathetic, rumpled suit. Bella, he pleaded, his voice cracking. Please don't do this. Think of what we had. At the door, 2 new security guards appeared. Not his, hers. They were built like bank vaults. They began to walk toward him. Bella raised a single, crimson-nailed hand. The guards stopped. She stood and walked over to Lucian, high heels clicking on the marble floor. She leaned down, so close he could smell her perfume. It wasn't the soft floral he remembered. It was something sharp, expensive, and cold. You're looking for a reason, she whispered, so only he could hear. You want it to make sense. Our son, he choked out, the last desperate card he could play. I've seen the pictures. Mark showed me. Liam. He's beautiful. Bella's face, which had been granite, became something even harder. You, she hissed, her voice a venomous quiet. Do not ever speak his name. I can fix this, Lucien babbled, tears of pure terror and rage streaming down his face. Bella, I was wrong. I was stressed. The merger. You didn't just dump me, Lucien, she whispered, cutting him off. You tried to erase me. You tried to force me to terminate my pregnancy. You called my child, a problem to be handled, a complication, a liability. You threw us out with nothing, into the cold, and you thought we would just die. She leaned in closer. Well, I handled it. I am the complication you couldn't see. You were never fighting a rival CEO, Lucien. You were fighting a mother. And you were fighting a Blackwell. She stood up to her full height. My son, Liam Hayes. He's 5 years old. He's brilliant. He's learning to read. And he's already a better chess player than you ever were. And he will never, ever know your name. That was the private knowledge that fueled me. Not your business, your failure as a human being. That is my checkmate. She gave a sharp, single nod to the guards. He's trespassing. They took Lucian by the arms. He didn't fight. He was a ghost in a bespoke suit. He was undone. They dragged him from the boardroom he had built, past the logo he had designed, a testament to an ascendancy that had just spectacularly, and finally, fallen. As he was pulled through the door, he looked back one last time, a pathetic, broken wreck of a man. "Bella!" She didn't turn around. She had already walked to the massive window. With a press of a button, the blinds began to whir, slowly, majestically, rising. The afternoon sun flooded the room, illuminating the dust, the fear on the board members' faces, and the woman who now owned the sky. Bella Hayes stared down at her city. She didn't look back as the doors slammed shut, echoing the final, definitive end of Lucian Vance. Lucian Vance was last seen boarding a bus at Port Authority. The SEC investigation and the class action lawsuits took everything he had left. Isabella Sinclair, in a twist of delicious irony, was also implicated in the fraud and is currently facing trial. The Vance Ascendancy Group is no more. And Bella Hayes didn't keep the Empire. She didn't want it. It was never about the money. It was about the correction. She broke the company apart, piece by piece, and sold the assets, ensuring every employee and investor was made whole. She used the profits to establish the Liam Hayes Foundation, a non-profit that funds and protects female artists and entrepreneurs who've been silenced by powerful men. She and her son, Liam, live on the Blackwell estate, but not in the main house. She rebuilt her old art studio, the one Lucian had despised. She's back to making her trinkets, and for the first time in her life, she is not poor, and she is not rich. She is simply, and finally, free. If you were on the edge of your seat listening to Bella's story, please show your support. Don't let her story get buried like Lucien tried to bury her. Hit that like button if you believe in justice. Share this video with someone who needs to be reminded of their own strength. And most importantly, subscribe to our channel and ring the bell. We post stories of incredible revenge, shocking twists and real-life drama every single week, and you don't want to miss what's coming next. What did you think of Bella's revenge? Was it too much, or just what Lucian deserved? Let us know in the comments below.